There is one scene in the Brothers Karamazov, however you want to pronounce it, that has no business being as precise as it actually is about the modern world. Christ returns to Earth as a person during the Spanish Inquisition. He is then arrested, and then the Grand Inquisitor, which is an old cardinal of 90 years old, and the man who has spent his entire life burning heretics at the stake in the name of God, visits him in his cell and delivers him a monologue that is one of the most devastating things, in my opinion, ever written in history. He tells Christ that he made a mistake with his options. He tells Christ that when he offered humanity freedom, he offered them genuine, real freedom, the freedom to choose, the freedom to believe, autonomy, to live without any sort of certainty. He gave humanity something that they were never equipped to carry, or never will be equipped to carry. That the greatest burden a human being can have or can bear is the freedom to choose. And that most people, given the choice between freedom or bread, or even just autonomy or certainty, will choose the bread 99% of the time. Every time even. They will choose it gratefully and willingly, and they will choose it with relief. The Grand Inquisitor is not the villain of this scene, however, and in my opinion, that is the problem that so many people overlook. Dostoevsky was a Christian. At the time, in Russia, 99% of people would have been. He believed in freedom. He believed in the soul and in the redemptive capacity of suffering. However, he was also honest enough with himself to write the most articulately possible case against his own position possible. The Grand Inquisitor's argument was never refuted in the book, in the text. Instead, Christ simply responds to the entire monologue with silence and then just a kiss. And that, in my opinion, is either the most profound answer ever imaginable or no answer at all. And I think Dostoevsky left it up to you to decide for that exact reason. However, Dostoevsky's diagnostic of this is simple. Humans are weak. They are not shamefully weak, but instead simply constitutionally weak. The weight of genuine freedom, the actual feeling or the freedom that comes with zero guarantee or no authority or no bread, is so much more than most people are willing to carry and will ever be willing to carry. So what they do is naturally they surrender it. They surrender it to institutions, they surrender it to ideologies and to relationships and to routines and to anything that takes the weight off of choosing and instead replaces it with the comfort of being told what they have to do. And then they call it living, they call it their life. Now, Camus read Dostoevsky very, very carefully. He knew the entire Grand Inquisitor argument and sat with it. And for some reason, if you can tell me why, he disagreed with it. Not in a naive or in an arrogant way. Not by pretending that Dostoevsky's diagnosis was wrong. Camus understood that the world offers no meaning to you. It offers no guarantee. It offers no reason sufficient enough to actually justify full commitment to living. He understood the silence. He understood the gap. He understood the absence of bread, simple bread, in the metaphysical sense instead of in the actually physical sense. He had looked at the exact same emptiness that Dostoevsky's Inquisitor was pointing at and mentioning and dialoguing about for so long, and he didn't flinch from it at all and instead responded. His answer to that was to revolt. In The Myth of Sisyphus, Albert Camus took the most absurd image available at the time. It was a man condemned to push a boulder up a hill forever. He reached the top and then he would have to go straight back down and roll the same boulder up over and over and over. He would watch it roll back down and he would push it again with no prevail. And he asked that man what the honest response to that condition would be, hypothetically of course. Not suicide. Actually, for some people, they might believe that the best thing they can do is just end it. They don't want to push that boulder up the hill forever. And again, also, not the surrender of their freedom to whoever offered certainty in that place of it. Instead, it was to revolt against the boulder. It was the daily and the deliberate choice, the completely unjustified decision to push the boulder up the hill anyway, regardless of the fact that it's going to roll back down. It was to live in a world that offers nothing back to him. It was to live fully in that world, even though the universe will provide nothing back to you for your effort. It was to say yes to the world, not because the universe earned your yeses, earned your respect, but instead because the alternative is the very cage that Dostoevsky talked about in The Grand Inquisitor. Camus insisted, he persistently told us that we must imagine Sisyphus as happy, not because the boulder will ever stop rolling if he was happy, but instead because the pushing, which is chosen freely and without any sort of illusion, is the only form of dignity available for Sisyphus. Now, here is where they cannot be reconciled. There is no reconciliation between the two in this sense. Dostoevsky honestly says that most people will always pick the cage, that the Grand Inquisitor was not the villain, but instead a realist in that sense, that the history of human civilization is essentially the history of people surrendering their rights and surrendering their freedom for comfort, and then calling it a society and calling it faith or calling it religion or calling it security or anything they can call it to justify them, calling it the responsible thing to do with a life that could actually go wrong if you're not careful with your own life. Camus, however, says that the cage was a choice. The cage was the choice because surrender was not inevitable. Surrender is repeated, and it's repeated daily in the space where the revolt should have been. That the person who has accepted the bread and the certainty has not yet discovered something true about human nature in itself. What they have done is simply stopped the choosing and given up. One of them was describing what people would do in that situation, and the other one was describing what people could have done in that situation instead. One was realistic and one was hypothetical, but both held their own significance for some reason. Now, the reason this argument has never actually been resolved between the two is because both of them are right about something that the other one can never fully account for. Dostoevsky is right in the sense that freedom is harder than most people will ever be willing to admit that it is. That the comfortable cage is chosen more often than not by people, and by more people than anyone wants to actually admit to or acknowledge, or including the people inside the cage itself. Camus, however, is also right in the sense that the cage is still a choice. The door of the cage was never locked. You were always thin enough to fit between the gaps, between the bars. You could always get out of the cage. That the person inside the cage put themselves in there and always has the choice to leave. Now, what neither of them could actually tell you is which one you yourself actually have been. Whether the life that you are currently living in this very moment is the life of revolt or the life of surrender. Whether you have been pushing the boulder up the hill and being happy to push the boulder because it's all that the indifference of the world offers to you, or just been waiting for someone to take the boulder away from you. That question is the only question right now that belongs to you. That is the only question that I think you should tackle right now. And I don't think it ever will have a comfortable answer. But I think it's worth sitting with that question for a while and understanding what the answer is, regardless of whether or not it is indifferent to everything that you currently believe.